What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Kevin Jackwitz. This is the Kaged review, and this is a review for Mortal Engines, a spoiler review. I did the non-spoiler already where I talked about how this movie is really got me torn in some ways because visually it's very cool. It's definitely impressive to look at this world that they've created and the machine cities that they've created, this whole steampunk design that they have. To see it on film is absolutely amazing to look at. All the way through the movie, beginning to end, it's very, very beautifully done. The problem with this movie that I said was the lack of character development, the lack of relationship development. I've talked about that in so many movies before, how I love movies that rely on performance and having to have strong acting skills. And if you stripped all the special effects away, you have just people playing out their lives that can be very powerful at times if it's done well. This was not. Not at all. I'm going to try to get her name right. I got to look at the screen here because she's got a last name that's a little odd for me. So it's Hera Hilmarsdottir, and I'm probably butchering in that, and that's okay because I don't know her. She plays Hester Shaw, which is the main character in this movie, and not a great performance. A good performance, but not a great performance. But when you're in the lead role, you need somebody strong, and I don't feel that she was strong enough. Part of the reason is she has a love interest in this movie, and they start building towards this romance, and nothing really sells. You don't feel connected to it. You don't feel any emotion from either one. And so it leaves kind of just a blank slate there. The two actors that I thought were very good in this movie were Hugo Weaving. Of course, if you know anything about Hugo, I think I called him excellence in acting, and that's really Hugo. He really is just an excellent actor. And I think really ever since, ironically, The Matrix, I've just loved him, and just about anything he does, he just has a certain style that he brings that works very, very well. And even when he's spoken out against roles and, not really like the roles, but taking them because, they paid very well, he still does very well with them. And so he's one of the highlights of the movie for sure. Hugo Weaving, he plays his character Valentine, who Hester Shaw is hunting because he killed her mother. They were working on a project and she found some things that she wasn't supposed to find, and he killed her. And so her mission was to kill him back. The other really good performance was the guy who was really, I don't know if I should say the owner or the president or the king or whatever you want to call him, but he was essentially the head of London, which was the city on wheels that Valentine was on as well. And he was paid by Patrick Malahide, who was Balon Greyjoy in the Game of Thrones series. Another really good actor, and another moment that really shone through. And he didn't really have a lot in this movie, to be very honest. But what he did have, it just worked. There's another girl who I can't really pronounce her name. I'm sure I'm going to tear this up too. But Jihai, or Jihei, or whatever the hell it's called. She plays Anna Fang, who is like leader of this rebel faction that's, trying to take on the government of London. And one thing I didn't like about this is she very sporadically shows up with no explanation. She does that a couple of times in the movie, and they really don't go into why or any real reasoning behind why she'd be fighting Valentine specifically or trying to help out Hester Shaw specifically. I mean, they made a slight connection, but that was it. And throughout this movie, that was the big problem with this, is it felt like there were just missing pieces of the story. They spent a lot of time creating like the beginning chase scene where London is chasing a few other smaller cities, and it shows you how it just pulls in the smaller cities and kind of consumes it, so it helps London run. But with all that, you're just skipping so much story development And so you're like, you feel like the movie kind of plays hopscotch here and there. Um, and I think the biggest point that I could make that shows the lack of effect is there were a couple of deaths in here that just really, they were meant to be emotional impacts. Nothing. I got nothing out of that. Like, even one of the main characters, Anna Fang, the one who's, you know, the leader of this rebel faction, she sacrifices herself so they could destroy this weapon that Valentine was trying to create. You know, one of the main characters of the movie, and there was just no effect. Like, I was like, okay, she's dying. It has zero effect on me because I'm not invested in the character. And that was something that this movie failed miserably at. A couple of points there, like I said, you know, where you've got one death, you've got a major character death toward the end, you've got the budding romance between the Hester Shaw character and her little love interest there. None of that really sold. This was literally just a movie to go and see. And when I say go and see, I mean just literally visually see what the movie is. Because visually it's beautiful. There's a couple of things that were really, really amazing. The first part of the movie, you open up, you see a bunch of cities, like they just look like normal cities, and you got people looking out for, you know, things running around, and then somebody calls out, you know, London or whatever they call the city, and then it was very cool because they started to move, and you could see that they're actually not regular cities, they're kind of mechanized, and they turn into these cities on wheels, these like amazingly large vehicles. And so that was amazing to look at. And later on in the movie you got to see like a city in the sky. It's kind of like this command center, and I thought that was another thing that was really cool. Some of the flying machines they created were very cool to look at. So I mean, that's what this movie was. It was eye candy, but there was no substance to it. There was really nothing past the eye candy that really got you invested in this movie. And that's a shame because it had a lot of potential, and I feel like they just put too much in one movie, and maybe they should have spread it out and tried to create something, make the storyline a little deeper, and go from there. But they didn't do that, which is unfortunate because, like I said, the potential was there. So I'm looking at the director because I thought initially that this was Peter Jackson. And I found out it's not Peter Jackson, it's Christian Rivers was the director. So because they had Peter Jackson's name all over this, and it looked amazing from the trailer to me, I was like, okay, you know, we're going to have this new kind of otherworldly place that he's created, much like Lord of the Rings. I was dead wrong, and it really suffered. And yeah, I did look up that article I was talking about in the non-spoiler review, where this movie is just bombing, and it's set to lose like $100 million maybe. So that's gonna hurt. Anytime you put this much investment into a movie, man, you've got to flesh out the characters and the storyline, because if I won't say that audiences don't like to just go into a brain dead movie and watch something, because that's not true, because there's honestly a lot of times people go in to watch movies and I'm just like, why, this is just dumb, and they just love it. But I think for a movie like this, especially coming off of novel, you know, readers tend to be a little bit smarter, more educated. You know, you've got to have that. You've got to have people and the situations that you care about and the relationships that you care about, and you get none of that in this. So, long story short, I feel like they really dropped the ball on this. It fell short of the mark by a mile. I wasn't as hard on it as other people because I can kind of go into a theater and just shut my brain off and just enjoy what I'm watching. And for that, I gave it a 6, and realistically, it's probably a 4 or 5. Like, if you're talking about the storyline, the acting, it really was probably a 4 or 5. Some of the lines were very cheesy. Some of the acting was not the greatest, and the plot and the storyline, it wasn't put together cohesively in this movie. And apparently a lot of people like the books, but this is clearly a bad translation if the books were that good. So that's where I'm at. I think I'm going to leave it at a 6 just because visually there was so much there, so much going on. I did enjoy seeing what they created with that. I thought it was very beautiful. Other than that, not impressed with the movie that much at all. So that's where I'm at. I'm probably being a little bit nice with it, but whatever. So let me know what you think in the comments. The big spoilers, before I get too far ahead of myself, where like you find out that Valentine is Shaw's dad. And then there's this like robot, like Terminator type dude, decaying skin that is a last person from this new kind of army that they created, and he took Hester Shaw in, and he was hunting her because he wanted to turn her into what he was, and she kind of reneged on that, and so there was kind of like really the most emotional moment in the movie was when he found out that she was in love with this guy, and he decided to give her a pass on her promise to him, and then he kind of died, and that was it. And so I mean, it was really kind of an oddly paced movie for sure. So yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at with it. So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. I just felt it fell short of the mark. So if you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. My name is Kevin Jackowitz. Kaged Nation out.